Welcome back sa ating PSTV5 online, sa ating Net Kapihan, Talakayan at Chikahan. Ako po inyong Kuya Nono, inyong Direk Rene. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Magandang hapon sa mga nasa Pilipinas at iba pang parte ng mundo. Sa gabing ito ay pag-uusapan po natin ang IELTS, ang International English Language Testing System. Yan, trademark yan. At syempre ang ating resource person, si Phil Rodriguez mula sa Dunedin. Phil, magandang gabi sa iyo.
Magandang gabi, Rene, at salamat andito ulit tayo. Magandang hapon sa mga kaibigan natin at mga fellow Filipinos all over the world. Hindi natin alam kung anong oras din sa
Oo
kanila.
nga eh. At medyo pasensya na po kayo that meron kaming technical issues. Alam nyo dito sa New Zealand, since Monday o Sunday pa yata, ay may mga power outages, no? At dahil,
Yes.
ano yan eh, yung IELTS yan, British English yan, ang ibig sabihin brown out, black out, ganun. So, yung, I suppose, dyan din sa iyo, Phil, di ba? Parang, kasi kami
Meron,
minsan,
meron.
4 na oras walang kuryente.
Kada suburb meron siyang it's either inaayos or biglang nag-outage lang talaga.
And so you can imagine kung ano nangyayari, di ba, sa mga appliances, sa mga equipment, gano'n. Kaya pasensya na po kasi medyo na-late kami ng konti. Pero nandito na kami ni Phil at bago tayo pumunta sa IELTS, na-intriga ako dito kay Phil kasi aside from being an IELTS examiner, no, dati siyang guro, siya ay narinig ko na sa mga taga-Dunedin yan na masasarap ang kanyang mga niluluto, mga cakes and pastries. Ano itong Le Cordon Bleu sa Wellington? Nag-aral ka ba doon?
Oo, hindi nag-aral lang isang araw. I cannot claim. I wish I had the opportunity and the chance to really study in long term. So, yung Le Cordon Bleu, di ba, nag-start siya sa France. And luckily, ang Philippines, merong Le Cordon. So, we're lucky to have it. O, New Zealand has one. So, mahaba yung courses nila. So, for those people wanting to do culinary arts, they can enroll. At meron din silang management side ng restaurants. Now, meron silang, yung kanilang, ang courses kasi, merong patisserie, at meron yung talagang, Ngayon, nag-o-offer sila ng mga short courses for people like me na, yung iba enthusiast, yung iba naman gusto mag-upgrade. So, ang swerte na nakita ko, merong 1-day na course nung ngayon Saturday last month. Ang ginawa yung Gateau Saint Honoré. Yung si Saint Honoré, hindi ko alam kung tama ipapronounce ko kasi French. Si Honoratus, siya yung patron saint ng mga bakers. So,
Honoré. Saint Honoré.
siya,
Okay.
So, yun, ginawa yun nila in honor of the saint. Actually, yung ginawa namin, ginagawa raw yun sometimes as a test sa ibang pastry na students. Yung gato na yun. So, siya. So, actually, siya? Yung base niya, puff pastry. And then, may creme patisserie sa loob. Pero yung nakabilog doon, yung choux pastry. Yung sinasabi natin, sa Philippines, tawag natin yung cream puff.
Cream puff.
Creme patisserie. Ang naman ng creme patisserie, kasi, ng choux pastry, kasi iba, maraming technique siya. Pero ang real test ng choux pastry, yung pag ninanak mo siya, kasi dapat maging hollow siya sa loob. Para malagyan siya ng pastry cream. Ayun. So, idinidip din yon sa caramelized na sugar. Tapos kinakapit around. Tapos lalagyan din ng another sa loob ng creme patisserie ulit. Yan. Maganda siya, pero matamis.
Okay. Yung ba, Phil, kaya ka you upskilled dito sa because it's because of your cafe na gagawin nyo sa cafe.
Diba, kasi I used to run a bakery dito sa Dunedin, and I closed it down in 2019 because I need to concentrate on my health. Actually, diabetic ako. Hindi ako nagpapalabas ng anything from the bakery na hindi ko tinikman. Yan ang nangyari sa akin. And also, kasi Rene, when you run a bakery, you start working at 2 a.m. It's terrible. I
Correct yan.
realize hats off ako sa mga bakers and
Mhm.
mga chefs, lalo na sa bakers because they really start early. So,
Mm.
fresh yung breads mo early morning. So, ang hirap ng
Hmm.
trabaho ng mga bakers, talagang ang gagaling nila. So nag-stop ako and then ngayon nagbukas nga kami ng takeaway namin and people
Mhm.
still order cakes and some breads from me. Pag may time
Mhm.
ako, I can accommodate, the orders.
Hmm.
Pag hindi kaya. So yeah,
So
I took the chance nung nag-offer yung likod doon
mhm.
ng one day na workshop. I think it's really
Hmm.
helpful kasi ang hirap humanap ng one day na course. Yung
Hmm.
tuturo sa'yo will teach you yung technique. Kasi hindi naman ako trained na baker.
Mhm.
Hindi ako trained na baker.
Hindi ka trained na baker?
No, no.
Oh,
I
okay.
only did short courses when I'm in Manila. Nagte-take lang ako ng mga one-day course, two-day
Mm.
courses. So
Mm.
wala. Tapos yung may hiwagang YouTube, diyan talaga ako natuto. Kaya
So
maraming
passion mo
salamat.
talaga, it's your passion to bake, 'no? Itong, yung
Oo. So, we're so lucky we reached this age, itong technology na to, Rene,
mhm.
kasi anybody can study online, di ba?
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
But being instructed by experts, I think yun yung maganda kasi they can intervene kung mali yung ginagawa mo or if you've
Ayun,
developed
oo,
better habits already.
oo.
Yun.
Well, as teachers, we all know na nothing beats yung face-to-face talaga, no? So, pero we make do with online. Kagaya si Phil, so lumipad ka papuntang Wellington to do that, yung,
Mm.
yung
And may kasama ako doon, isang taga Wellington, and
hmm.
dalawa, mag-mom sila, mom and daughter, from Christchurch. Talagang lumipad pa
Ah,
kami, oo.
I suppose it's a bit expensive yung mga ganong klaseng kahit na
Ano
one day,
naman,
ano?
250 lang naman, salamat sa Diyos.
Okay. Oo, okay.
Affordable siya, 250.
Affordable. Okay, oo. Phil, matanong kita, are you from Cuenca, Batangas, or saan ka
No,
ba sa Pilipinas?
my mom is from Sawang, Lubo, Batangas.
Ah,
But we
kasi
were born.
ang alam ko sa Pilipinas, yung mga panadero, karamihan galing Batangas eh. Ano, sa may Cuenca yata, parang ganun, no? I don't
Oo.
know kung I don't know kung bakit, pero
Pero din sa Dunedin, karamihan ng galing Batangas, mga scaffolders.
okay, oo,
Tapos,
yun.
yung nasa Downer naman, karamihan ng mga nagle-lay ng fiber sa South Island, galing
Hmm.
Nueva Ecija.
Nueva Ecija, oo.
Oo, talagang, I think depende sa recruitment agent kung saan
Oh,
galing.
yeah. Oo,
So,
oo.
ang galing nga when you get yung isang barrio sa kanila, isang
Mhm.
barangay, nandito lahat.
Ay, wow, that's
Ang
good, that's
ganda,
good.
ganda. At least
Oo,
may
oo,
sense ng hope, diba?
pagpunta ko diyan, punta tayo dun, para makakausap ko sila
Of
'pag
course,
ano.
of course. Yes.
Ayun, ayos. So ngayon, we will go to our subject matter which is IELTS, no,
Mm-mm.
IELTS at, si Phil ay is an IELTS examiner. Hanggang ngayon ano, you
Yes,
do
oo.
yes. Oo, kaya yung iba hindi for privacy reasons hindi masyadong puwedeng, pag-usapan. Pero, nanonood naman si Dr. Murray Hisley dahil siya
Yes.
ay kasama ni Phil sa Pilipinas, when they were doing the IELTS at, sabi nga ni Doc, sabi ko kay Doc, part 2 kayo Doc, na ano.
Yes.
So, Phil, itong IELTS, bakit ba ano, ito ang importansya nito lalo na dito sa New Zealand ano, kasi ito lang ba ang tinatanggap na ano, and what is IELTS pala? Sige, para sa
Yun nga.
mga
So yung
listeners natin.
para sa mga nakikinig, yung IELTS kasi, it's an English test developed and it's jointly owned by the British Council, IDP Australia, at saka yung Cambridge Assessment English. Tama ba
Mhm,
ako?
mhm,
Cambridge English Language Assessment. So tatlo siya. So um, kasi ang Cambridge madami siyang exams, pero sa tingin ko, ang pinakakilala at the moment is IELTS kasi mas maraming test takers ng IELTS. And many
mhm,
countries accept IELTS as a measure or a test of English.
mhm,
Ang
mhm.
counterpart niyan sa US kasi would be the TOEFL.
Yung TOEFL, mhm, mhm,
So yung
mhm,
IELTS is British, and it's very important for people to recognize that because yung topics that they would have encountered during their reviews or if they had taken the exam, is very European ang experience and topics. Okay. Yes. And I'll explain later ano yung examples nun. So, dinevelop siya and it's been used widely. Um, yung ibang countries, mas favored nila yung TOEFL. Yung ibang countries naman, favored naman nila yung IELTS. Dati when the nurses were going, yung grabbing migration ng nurses to the States, di ba dati?
Correct,
It's
oo.
the choice of doing TOEFL or IELTS. And then, ang sunod na wave ng migration was going, yung healthcare sector, going, I think, to Australia in yung early 2000s. So, IELTS yung kinukuha nila. So, they have to get or achieve a certain band score in order to qualify. For example, for medical practitioners, they should get an 8.5 average, depende ko anong country. For dentists, ganun din. For nurses, it's a 7. For teachers, it's a 7 in New Zealand. So those are the examples. Now, hindi lang naman IELTS ang recognized by New Zealand. We'll take New Zealand as an example. You also have the PTE, and they also accept yung Cambridge, they also accept yung TOEFL. But for some reasons, many people take the IELTS to as evidence of their English proficiency.
Okay, so yun talaga ang parang primary yung main parang for you to get into whatever career you want. So bawat pala level iba-iba yung band
Iba-iba
yung
siya,
general, yun yung pinakamababa yung general it's
yung
6 ba?
general kasi, dalawa kasi yung, let's talk about migrants sa New Zealand, no? So, dalawang versions yung test. Isang academic, which is used for registration. So, medical, dental, at saka nursing, teachers. And then there's the general, which is used for migration purposes. So those people applying for residency, they are now required by the Immigration New Zealand to achieve an IELTS band score, for example, of a 6.5. And for the partners and children 16 years old and above, they are required a 5.0 na band score overall siya.
Ang naman kasi it's English, well, basically at tayo mga Pinoy, medyo maangat tayo in terms of yung sa kakayahan ng English. It's just that some of the terminologies ay medyo pagkaiba kasi nga sabi ni Phil, it's more of UK,
Yes.
British yung yung sinusundan na standard.
Orientation ba? Oo, yung orientation. I'll give you an example, for example, and I know a lot of our listeners have encountered this during their reviews, review centers, and also when they borrow books from the libraries to do their self-review at home. For example, is the term school leaver. In a writing task, and nag-raise ng question about yung Asian school leaver. And Renee, you and I know in New Zealand, it's legal for them to leave. Children here are, it's legal, it's lawful for them to leave school at the age of 16, di ba? Kasi yun yung age of consent natin. So pag pinost mo yung question ng school leavers at 16 or 15, for example, pinapili lang yung candidate, 15 ba o 16, sa tingin nyo tama ba yung age? Ang concept ng school leaver, wala sa Pilipino yon. Sa atin kasi, pag sa school, ang tawag sa atin kick out. Negative yung connotation sa atin. So, pag hindi mo na naintindihan yung term na yon, mali na lahat. Hindi mo na naintindihan yung konsepto. And that's why, when people ask me, or during our reviews, because I used to teach IELTS prep classes sa university at saka sa mga ibang PTEs dito, they have to understand yung saan ba pinanggagalingan ng mga questions. So, kung alam natin na European, British, so more or less dapat meron tayong konting background. Ano ba yung mga terms? Hindi naman kailangan kasing gamitin natin yung British terms sa exam pero you have to have an understanding ng ano yung pinanggagalingan nun. So, it's very good when they do reviews, they have to look at all those questions kasi kompleto tayo ng mga review materials online, sa library. from the
mm,
review center. So it's good to know those things. So um in my opinion, personal opinion, not professional opinion,
mhm,
some of those um worldview ng ano ng UK, ng European, ng British. Um another another area na medyo na ano mga Pinoy would be caring for the old people. Yung nagiging ano kasi sa ating kasi kultura natin, di ba, we take care of our elderly, di ba?
tama,
Ayun nga,
oo.
yung old, elderly ang tawag.
Oo,
Elderly.
isa pa yan ano, yung
Oo,
terminology yung sinasabi mo, tama.
oo,
Oo,
elderly.
elderly.
Sa atin, kasi di ba sanay tayo magsabi old? Ayun,
Oo,
kinokorek ako minsan ng mga kausap ko, elderly, okay, di ba?
mm,
Yun, mga elderly. So,
yeah,
minsan nagpo-post yung question sa kanila sa mga review materials na um, kung okay daw ba na yung isa-subsidize ng government, more subsidy bibigyan ng government sa rest home. Tapos biglang kakambyo yung mga Pilipino na test takers na, oh, I don't think it's ano, ganyan, kasi sa kultura natin dapat ganon.
mhm,
Ang ano dyan is you have to be, kasi di ba, you have to be open-minded and it's
mm,
only an exam.
mm,
You don't
mm,
have to take it personally. So, dapat mas maano ka na, kasi iba nga yung kultura, di ba? So,
mm,
yung pagkakaroon ng rest homes, it's a practice kasi we come from different cultures, di ba, Rene? We are
mm,
here, talagang dito, two-income household dito.
correct
Hindi
yan,
ka
oo.
pag merong may sakit, meron tayong elderly sa bahay, hindi natin maaalagaan. And that's the reason meron tayong rest homes. Sa
Mhm,
Pilipinas, it's a different scenario
mm,
because we have
mm,
people to take care of them and also we can afford to pay somebody to look after our elderly.
mhm,
So,
mm,
yun. So those are just two examples na how test takers should approach the exam.
mm. Hindi natin dapat ipasok yung pananaw natin na
Mm,
pagka-Pilipino dahil nasa ibang lugar na tayo, ibang senaryo.
mga
Kasi
scenario.
sa atin, 'di ba, nahihiya tayo kung yung iba ang mag-aalaga kay lolo, kay nanay, pero dito it is a given. Talagang yun na yung sistema, 'no? So that's what, Phil is saying, 'no? At, etong 'pag nagre-review, Phil, kasi ako, I'm just taking you as my example dahil nagtuturo ako, so hindi ako puwedeng kumuha ng parang review. So ang ginawa ko, nag-self-study ako, naglibro ako, gano'n. Merong ano yun, may advantage, may disadvantage. Ang advantage siyempre kung anong oras ka, okey. Pero ang disadvantage na napansin ko is wala kang kasama yung 'pag
Yes.
may nasa review center ka, yung meron kang kahuntahan, yung kasi you have to practice that. Kailangan mo i-practice yung ano, nalaman, kasi may speaking, may ano, So, yun ang ano ko, yung
Oo,
advice ko is if you can, 'no, yung in a group, yung mag-review kayo, not
sabi
on
ko
your
nga,
own.
tama ka rin kasi I think because you create time for review, okay, you do
Mm,
it on your own, but you need proper intervention.
mhm,
So you need a professional to do it for you,
correct,
right?
mhm,
And so, para sa akin, you have to invest ng kaunti because if these tests, yun yung balakid for you to apply
mhm,
for residency. So you have
mm,
to invest. Kasi nag-invest ka na sa sarili mo.
mm,
You also invested time and money sa pagpunta sa country na dinidesire mo. So dapat mag-invest ka rin
correct.
wisely kasi masasayang lang. And also, it would add to the stress that you already
Hmm,
have. Kasi kung yun na lang
mm,
ang kulang and everyone's counting on you to pass. And
hmm,
I've seen
naku,
a lot of people,
ako
kawawa
yun.
na sila. Di ba? Ang sakit sa dibdib, di ba?
Talagang ako tinamaan ako dun sa sinabi ni Phil kasi ako yun, everyone was dependent on me, 'no? At, Phil, isa pa siguro sa mga mag-a-IELTS is to take away yung kasi tayo sabihin na, magaling na ako mag-English, Ako
Oo.
professor na ako, engineer ako. But no, it's a different scenario, 'no? At,
Yes.
sabi ko nga sa'yo, 'di ba, nung nakuha ko yung akin, umiyak ako. Sabi yung sa university nagkato kasi sabi niya, "Are you alright?" Sabi ko, "Yes, I passed." Sabi ko gano'n. Kasi
Yes.
nakasalalay lahat eh. Hindi ka aabante kung wala ka ng IELTS. So, you know,
Also, one thing that I tell my clients or yung dating mga estudyante ko or if I do
mm,
free reviews, I tell them, kasi marami sa kanila, galit sila, why do I have to do this, ganyan, ganyan.
mm,
But I think, sabi ko, if you don't get that out of your system, you will not
mm,
succeed. In the
now,
first place, you want to be a part of this country or whatever country, di ba? Country, X country.
mm,
If that was the if that's the requirement of that country, then you
mm,
have to with keep an open mind at saka yung
mm,
heart. Kasi if you're resistant, kasi kukunin mo yung test, walang mangyayari.
mm,
Walang mangyayari. You'll be resistant to learning, to delivering, and
mm.
to perform your best during the exam. Kasi you have to understand, it's a testing condition. So you
Oh,
might be
yeah,
very
yung
But
time na
business
nandun
tayo
ka kung
kanina, outside, o sige conversation tayo, okay lang,
mm,
madali tayo. But under testing conditions, and people react to testing conditions differently.
mm,
Some of
mm,
them perform well because of adrenaline rush, and
mm,
some of them do not perform well at all. They
mm,
underperform because ninenervyos sila. And and they have to understand that the examiners are not there to help them overcome the nervousness
that's correct. Mm, that's
because
correct.
it's a test. The examiners are there to test whatever language you produce. So you have to produce the language. Pag wala kang language na produce, ano mamarkahan sa'yo?
Mm, mm, mm,
Mm-mm. Um, so I think you have to, in my opinion, you have to be prepared. So, pag hindi ka prepared, don't take the test because it will add to the stress on the day. Nenervyos ka, gumastos ka, and then you don't get the marks that you
mm.
that you require or yung
Sayang
gusto
lang,
ng mark. Oo. Hindi masamang
sayang.
maghintay, pero nakita ko in many of the candidates, mga sometimes gusto nila, meron kami na encounter every month nandiyan dyan eh, and there's no
Oh,
change. Yes, every month. We had may student kami dati, 25 times nag-IELTS, Rene.
ano? 45
Right,
times?
and on the 26th, I think she gave up and she studied again. She studied nursing in New Zealand, although she's been a practicing nurse na overseas.
Wow,
Yes,
mm.
nangyayari yun.
Mm,
And
nangyayari, yes, oo.
some people depend on luck, and some of them will be saying now, if they're watching, hindi man totoo yan, pumasa rin ako ng pang-apat ko. Yes, okay, very good, very good.
Mm,
But it does
mm.
not happen to everybody,
Yes,
Rene.
oo, oo. Kasi ang sinasabi namin ni Phil, 'pag pumasa ka, take one, 'di well well and done, very good, oo.
Well done.
Ah, oh, well done, oo. At, maganda 'yan. Pero yung iba, sometimes it would take them 1, 2, gano'n. Yung kamag-anak ko 'no, it take 3 beses yata bago siya ano na ngayon nurse na siya. Dahil ano 'yan, para yang ano, eh, parang board exam, 'di ba? Yung parang gano'n 'no? Yung
Aral
yung iba papasa, yung iba so, 4 'yan, Phil, 'di ba? 4 na areas, 'no? So, meron diyan yung, ano 'to, listening,
listening,
ah, ano 'to, yung
reading,
reading,
writing.
ah, writing and speaking ba yun? Speaking.
Speaking, no,
Hmm,
speaking, oo.
ayun,
So yung
oo.
LRW, sa sa taas ng equator, in Pilipinas,
Northern Hemisphere, okay.
in the morning, so Northern Hemisphere, so morning session would be the listening, reading and writing, LWR na sinasabi natin. And in the afternoon, they do the speaking on a
Hmm,
Saturday or a Thursday. Depends on the exam. However, in the Philippines, ang taas kasi ng population ng candidates. So they do
mhm,
the speaking beforehand and they do it the whole day. But on the test date itself, the LRW would be held in the morning and then the speaking test will be in the afternoon. In New Zealand, in the southern hemisphere, we do the
hmm,
speaking in the morning and the listening, reading, and writing in the afternoon. Because
bakit? Mm.
kasi on that day, depende sa
Mhm.
version ng test. Hindi naman madali gumawa ng test, di ba, Rene? And you know what candidates do? After the exam or after the speaking, they go to their phones and they text the questions. And some of them, they text it to their instructors sa mga language centers, sa testing center.
Okay.
Pinupull nila yung mga questions na na tinanong sa kanila during the speaking
Mm,
test. For example, yung speaking test. Kasi yung
mm,
ibang written test, hindi mo naman mahahabol yan. And also yung sa writing test, ang gagaling yung memory ng mga tao, di ba? Not only
mm,
Pinoys. So after the test ng afternoon, they will text their test review centers ano yung question na lumabas sa prompt. And that's the reason when you go online, there will be lots of materials with
mm,
sample questions from previous exams. Nakalagay doon
mm,
from previous exams, but you don't know if it's true or not. But whatever it is, if it
mm,
helps people, why not? Diba?
mm.
Yeah, you
Tama,
just have to
tama.
be creative and you just have to be resourceful. So,
Mhm,
okay na. So, that's what they do. So,
mhm.
that's the reason why magkaiba yung oras.
Yung
Sinasabay mo.
oras.
Yes.
Tsaka hindi naman yan ano iba-ibang araw din yan ano. Hindi naman yan parang yung buong mundo sabay-sabay mag-exam, hindi,
Meron
di ba?
meron 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 nagsasabay.
Meron gano'n? Oh,
Oo.
wow.
Kasi kung iisipin mo yung ang hirap gumawa. For example, ito lang, personal opinion, it's not I don't know kung paano nila gawin 'yan. For
Mm,
example, yung listening test. Mahirap gawin ang listening test eh.
mm.
Yes, and also because this is a standardized test. Tayo nagkakaintindihan tayo rin eh, and other teachers who are watching. Bago mo ma-standardize siya, ita-testing mo yan, di ba?
Correct, oo.
Oh, so it's either ang gusto natin 70-30 o 80-20. Pag 80-20, pwedeng ibig sabihin 80 nakakuha, 80, kunyari 80 ang nakakuha, masyado madali, di ba? Ganun
Mm,
yan, di ba? Depende kung ano yung marker natin. Ngayon kung
mm,
70-30, others would say, oh sige, okay yung 70. Ibig sabihin, 30 ang hindi nakakuha, 70 nakakuha, maganda. So it depends kung ano yung piniprescribe ng IELTS, hindi ko alam. So they
mhm,
do field testing before it becomes a standardized test. So it
hmm,
undergoes a process
mhm,
just
mm,
like
mm,
any other standardized test because I'm sure even with TOEFL and other standardized tests, fini-filled out nila yan tapos tinetesting nila yan if the questions are too easy or too difficult.
Tama, tama. Kasi nga yung ano, we don't want yung masyadong malaki yung attrition rate. So parang yung mga tao sabihin nila, "Ay hindi na ako kukuha niyan dahil
Yes.
10%, 20% lang pumapasa," parang gano'n. Pero 'pag
Yes.
masyado naman madali, parang alam mo yun, yung parang hindi pinaghirapan parang
Oo, hindi
siyempre
nag-hirap.
yung iba, 'di ba? "Oo, take 1 ako diyan, eh, oo,
Yes.
madali lang yan," parang gano'n.
You don't,
So
you
it's a
just,
balance,
yes,
'no?
balance should be a balance. So that's a standardized test.
Mhm. Naalala ko kasi, Phil, nung, kasi yung tita ko, Tita Pilar ko, she used to work for the British Council, 'no?
Mm,
Do'n sa New Manila yung office nila no'n, eh.
Manila.
Actually, yung
Sabi ko
British
sa
Council,
Ortigas. Oo.
oo, nung nag-aaral pa ako sa FEU, may British Council na sa Quiapo, in one of those old buildings. Kasi
Mm,
mahilig ako pumunta sa library nila, eh. Ang daming
yes.
libro. Tapos
Oo,
nung lumipat sila sa New Manila, doon sila yung British Council nga yung nag-handle noon ng ano, itong IELTS, no? Although kasi wala naman akong balak na pumunta sa British Commonwealth countries, TOEFL lang kinuha ko, or pinasa
okay.
ko, lahat gano'n. But, nung nasa New Zealand na, hindi kasi ano yung TOEFL, parang I had to take the IELTS, no? So,
Mm-mm.
gano'n talaga eh. Nung una, gano'n ako, mayabang ako eh. Ay, hindi, tapos na ako yan, gano'n. Pero, na-realize ko, sige, sasabihin ninyo, sige, hindi, ayaw mo kumuha, di wag, parang gano'n. Hindi, ikaw rin yung kawawa, di ba? Phil, nais ko lang batiin na magandang hapon si Green Life Channel, nakikinig sa atin, at si Kai Perez. Good evening, good afternoon sa inyo. At yan, mga ano sila, ano to, ito yung mga tips na binibigay ni Phil sa atin ay general ito, no? Kasi ito common naman kahit sino yung tatanungin nyo. It's the mindset ang
Yes, very
importante.
important ang mindset. Oo. Kasi alam din natin yan, Rene, nung nag-aaral tayo, di ba? Pag ayaw natin yung professor, di ba, hindi tayo matuto?
Mhm.
Exactly. It's the same thing with an IELTS exam, with any English test, with any test in particular. Uh, so, um, So, for example tayo,
Mm.
speaking, sabi nga natin, magaling tayo sa labas. Tapos pag
Mm.
nag-speaking test, pag ninervyos ka, um, talagang, di ba pag ninervyos tayo, nasa com arts ka eh. Mawawalan ka
Oo.
ng laway, di ba, Rene?
Oo. Magiging ano yung dry yung ano mo, yung
Nag-dry ako.
lalamunan mo.
Di
Oo.
ba malaki tumataas yung
Oo.
tono?
Oo, tumataas na.
Oo, tataas na yan. Oo, gano'n din yung babae, ganyan. Um,
Mm.
ang ano ko lang, ang tip ko lang, 'pag kasi alam ko naman before they take the test, hopefully they would have watched some videos or
Mm.
they would
Mm.
have done some review. When they borrow yung review books, may recording na yun ng mga speaking test na sample. So it would
Mm.
help them. And I know that the listeners, they know that yung speaking test is divided into three. For example, let's look at the speaking test. Yung intro part, yung may long term, at saka yung extended discourse, which is part 3. Tatlo yan. So,
Mm.
yung sa first part, madali lang siya. It's more on introduction and yung mga topics, ando dun sa mga libro natin, nakikita natin is everyday questions,
Mm.
yan, everyday things that we talk about. Ang tawag ko dyan, slum book. Alam mo yung bata tayo, may slum book, di ba?
Oo, oo, yung mga ano
Ang
natin,
tawag ko
mga
dyan, slum
favorite
book
natin,
question.
yun, oo.
Color, ganyan. Yan,
Mm.
tapos extended, sa long term naman, you'll be given a task and you'll be given a minute to prepare and then 1 to 2 minutes to deliver kung ano yung nasa task.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Yung pangatlo naman is an extended discourse. Yung topic would be connected to the second task, di ba? For example,
Mm.
pinag-usapan natin
Mm.
radio dito, pwede natin pag-usapan mass communication sa third task, di ba? Naalala mo yung
Mm.
test mo,
Mm.
ganun yan siya. Hindi mo lang siya, during the test, during the exam, hindi mo siya maintindihan. That's only after you go out of the room, out of the exam room, maintindihan mo, connected pala yun. Yun.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
yung, sa Slambok, karamihan ng mga exam, ng mga candidates, they try to memorize yung part 1 kasi sa review center, they do review. Kasi sabi ko nga,
Mm.
pinupull nila yung questions. So, simple questions lang yan, like, what's your favorite color? Lalabas doon. Ang tip ko lang dyan is always, when you answer a question, be ready with an explanation. You should be able to answer the question why.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, like, for
Mm.
example, what color do you prefer to wear every day, Renee? You would say blue. So you should be ready why. Why blue? Diba?
Mm.
And those questions, nagugulat yung mga candidates kasi those are simple questions na sometimes you don't even have the time to think or ponder about every day kasi nga busy na buhay natin.
Mm.
So
Mm.
medyo nagugulat sila sa mga madadaling question. But in reality, madali lang siya kasi it's an everyday things, di ba?
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. It's just
So,
trying to see na you understand those simple things, no?
so,
Parang
so,
naiintindihan mo.
ang inaano ko lang dyan is, and I would have to repeat this, ang ginigradean ng IELTS would be the spoken or the written language, yung sample ng language mo.
Mhm.
Kasi doon niya
Mhm.
i-check yung proficiency mo sa language.
Mhm. Mhm. At
So,
saka kasi yeah, go ahead, Phil.
so dapat magsalita ka. Kasi karamihan, for example, males, I'm not being sexist, ang mga males kasi hindi yung madaldal katulad ng babae. So I always tell pag nag-ano ko, nagre-review ako,
Mhm.
yung mga lalaki, dumaldal naman kayo kasi walang mangyayari ng oo ka lang ng oo. Kasi
Mhm.
anong
Mhm.
degradan sa'yo? So you have to speak.
Mhm. Tsaka
Oo.
kasi yun nga yung sinasabi ko, okay kung on your own kagaya ng ginawa ko, pero I missed out on yung talking with others. Although syempre nagtuturo ako, so pero iba pa rin yung kapwa mo na nag-aaral kayo ng IELTS, no? At helping each other and things like that. Yung sa writing naman na Phil, meron kasi yung iba natatakot kasi, oh, pangit ang sulat ko, yung ganyan-ganyan.
Ay naku, kahit pangit ang sulat nila, okay lang kasi babasahin yan. Trabaho ng examiner na to read. Ngayon yung, Renee, pinadalang kita and I know sa
Mm.
listeners natin, no, kasi recorded
Sige.
naman ko, they can just go to ielts.org. That's the IELTS
Mm.
website. Or you can
Mhm.
go to the British Council website or sa IDP website. Nandoon yung public version ng band descriptors.
Pakita
Give
natin to, Phil, ano?
Oo.
Medyo, okay, sige. Share natin tong screen na to.
Oo,
Ito
example.
yung tinatawag, ano tawag dito, Phil?
Band descriptors.
Band descriptors. Yan, ayan. Medyo maliit siya siguro, pero just a
Nasa
sample.
website yan, makikita niyo yan. Ang tawag dyan yung public version. So makikita dyan, Rene, yung band sa harap natin, di ba? Nasa left side, 9 to 0 sa second page at 0 yon. Yung descriptor, yung task response. Sa pangalawa, coherence and cohesion. Pangatlo, third column would be lexical resource. And the last one will be grammatical range and accuracy. So, it covers all areas ng language sa writing. If yung candidates and those studying for those reviewing for the exam, they can look into these band descriptors because this is provided by IELTS.org. And they can look on how they will be graded. Makikita mo yung ilalim dyan, Rene, yung 0 sa pinaka-bottom. Sa bottom. Yung 0, kasi sinasabi nila, anong grade mo? Hindi grade ang IELTS, it's a band descriptor. So yung 0 dyan, meaning hindi, anto writing, hindi ka nagsulat, nakasulat dyan, band descriptor na writing task 2, di ba? Sadali lang ha. Nakasulat na 0,
Zero. Writes at memorize. Minemorize niya. Oo.
Does not attempt, yung 0 does not attempt the task in any way and writes a totally memorized response. Ibig sabihin, may evidence if you do that. And does not attempt the task kung wala kang sinulat. So that's a 0. So again, hindi, sinasabi kasi nila, anong grade mo? Hindi grade. It's a band descriptor. Hindi porket baksa ka, hindi. Kasi you fit the band kung paano yung produce mong language, and in this case, yung writing task mo, you have to look, ano bang ginawa ko? So, if you look at number 1, kung ang band score mo 1, ibig sabihin, the answer is completely unrelated to the task. May tinatanong sa'yo, may pinapagawa sa'yo, hindi ginawa.
Iba sagot mo.
Ano ka, talagang ganun ka. Tapos, makikita mo sa coherence of cohesion, fails to communicate any message. Tapos makikita mo sa lexical resource, can only use a few isolated words. Tapos sa grammatical range and accuracy, kasi nga, sobrang ikli, cannot use sentence forms at all. So, yun. So, yung first stop sana ng mga candidates or those reviewing, tingnan nyo yung band descriptors. It will help you a lot para malaman mo paano grading. Kasi a lot of people talk about it and then they bash they say negative things about examiners. But examiners cannot say anything about them kasi di ba, Anto, sikreto to and everything is recorded, Rene. And the recording is for the protection of both the candidate and the examiner. So they were marked according sa band descriptors na ito. And this is only the public version. And of course, there's a version na pang professional na markers.
So ito ay available dun sa
available yan sa IELTS.org. So, or sa British Council or IDP, check nyo lang yun. Everything is there para maintindihan nyo how you will be graded or how you will be marked. Hindi pala grade, sorry. Marked.
Phil, itong IELTS, they say nag-expire ito. After 2 years, you have to retake.
Yes.
So, anong reason nun? Does it mean na, pumasa na ako? Di ba? Logically, kung ano ako, gagaling ako.
Hindi ko masagot, hindi ko rin alam. Basta alam ko, after 2 years daw, sabi ko sa sarili ko, siguro mas mataas ang score niya sa susunod.
Kasi nung a couple of years ago, sabi ko gusto kong mag-apply ng tapos sabi nga yung IELTS nga daw hinahanapan ako. Sabi ko, well, I passed it in 2008. Sabi hindi, kailangan yun. Tapos 10 years ago, kailangan namin yung bago. Sabi ko, ganun ba? Sabi ko, di ba na, hindi na ako mag-apply.
I will look into that and tell Murray pag turn niya na. I'll look into that and Mary, bakit nga ba 2 years lang? Kasi nakalimutan
Mm.
ko na, promise. Nakalimutan ko
Ang
na kung
TOEFL ba gano'n? I don't know kung may
wala. Hindi ko
expiration
rin
din.
alam. Hindi ko alam may
Walang
expect.
expiration ng TOEFL ano?
Hindi ko lang alam.
Hindi rin, oo, oo. So 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 you were saying yung IELTS, meron pa isa yung PTE, ano ba, Pearson?
Person yan eh, person yan. Kung PTE, ano yan, American yan, person yan eh, di ba? Parang
American
yan.
din.
Oo.
Oo. Pero ano na rin yung accepted ba yun sa nursing
Accepted
yata,
yan,
'no?
oo. If they go sa Immigration New Zealand na website, that's
Mhm,
nakalagay, tapos nilagay nila language requirement, makikita nila yung different tests and required na scores
mhm,
that will be
mhm.
acceptable as an evidence of language proficiency or language requirement for immigration purposes or for registration purposes.
Tapos yung OEC, 'di ba isa pa yun? OEC ba yun?
OET. OET.
Oo, OET.
Ay, nag-i-examine din ako. Hindi pala, interlocutor ako. Kasi,
Ano yung
yan eh, ay,
interlocutor? Ano yun?
sa speaking lang ako, kasi it's for health professionals.
Ah,
Uh,
okey.
so they come in, role-playing siya. Role-playing siya.
Ah,
Minsan nga feeling ko ako talaga may sakit ako.
gano'n?
Recorded, siya yung professional, siya yung health professional, and I will be the patient or the
Mhm,
caregiver o may-ari, kunyari vet siya, yung
mhm,
exam for him or her, would be, kunyari ako yung carer, ako yung mommy ng dog, for example.
mhm,
So,
hmm,
tapos, pag interlocutor ako yung mag-pretend na may sick ako.
mhm.
Tapos, and this is recorded, and this will be sent to Australia to be marked by another person. Mm. So ano
Okey,
siya,
mm.
ang maganda naman sa PTE, to be an interlocutor, you don't have to be a language teacher. You can, pwede ka i-train and then
Mhm,
mag-act ka lang as,
hmm.
kung ano yung hinihingi sa yung acting.
Yung Phil, yung advice mo dun sa mga wala pa sa New Zealand ano, so is
Mm,
it best that they should already get the IELTS, wala pa sila dito, parang
mm.
gano'n? Kasi
Oo,
yung ano ba, nasa Cebu ka, kasi alam ko sa Cebu, Manila, yung mga gano'n major cities, nag-aano sila ng IELTS. Noon yun, hindi ko alam ngayon
ang
nung
daming
lockdown na.
IELTS, ang daming testing centers.
Mhm, mm.
As in nagkalat sa Philippines, ang dami, magagaling, and ang ano ko lang sa kanila is, ang maganda sa kanila because they've got, mga Pilipino gagaling talaga eh. Magaling talaga.
Oo.
Kasama tayo. I think, kaya marami sila nag-a-achieve sila very good.
Mhm.
And I know they do a lot of writing workshops, reading workshops.
Mhm.
Ang sinasabi ko lang sa mga panagre-review ko, yung listening, you can do it on your own because you can do it at home.
Hmm.
Inaano
Yung
ko lang, I tell them, kasi you can borrow, di ba? You can borrow the
hmm,
CDs from the
oo.
library, from the universities, colleges, and you do it. I always tell my clients, find time. You have to create time. Busy tayo, but you
Hmm,
have to create time.
mhm.
If you can do Facebook for hours every night, set
Hmm,
aside 1 hours
mhm,
for listening 40 minutes lang. Diba?
mhm,
And then 10 minutes transfer time. Kasi yung listening lang naman na may transfer time, ang reading wala. So
hmm.
40 minutes makikinig ka, then sinasagutan mo na yan. Kasi wala namang balikan yung, hindi ka naman pwede magpara, sandali.
Oo,
Dire-diretso yung
tama,
listening eh,
oo.
di ba? So sagot, sagot, sagot. And then you have 10 minutes to transfer your answer sa real test time.
Mhm,
So yun, mantakin mo, if you just do Monday, listening, do it, di ba? And then Tuesday, you do reading. So set aside 1 hour to do that. I always tell them to do it at the same place in a testing condition. As
mhm,
teachers, when you train students for tests, so they have to sit on a chair, on a table talaga, and nothing in front of them. Just like
mhm,
in a testing condition,
mhm,
you can't study na nakahiga. You can't
hmm,
study na nasarap ang TV. You can't do that. You have to study the way you will be delivering or you will be tested. So you
yes, that's a
always
very
find
good tip.
spot yan
Mhm.
talaga. Alis mo mga picture ng mga misis or the boyfriend, distraction. Should be a clean desk when you do
Mhm,
it. And it's only 1 hour every day and they have to do that. So listening and reading should be out of the way. For any
mhm,
Filipino test taker, kaya nyo yan. Kaya
mhm.
nyo. Um,
You
Listening talagang ano siya, training siya for you, titingnan mo yung tests. Pag nakita nila yung test, they have to review for, kunyari, part 1. Nakita mo kung anong klaseng test yan. Chart.
Mhm.
So, pag chart ang nakita mo, you have to look at the headings of the columns para alam mo kung anong
Mhm.
hahanapin mo. And then you
Mhm.
can predict, anong sunod na sasabihin, time na, anong size ng shoe na, yun na. Pag
Mhm.
nakita niya naman nila na map ng mall, hanapin mo na agad yung entrance. Di ba?
Mhm.
Hanapin mo yung
Mhm.
entrance para alam mo yung exit. Kasi wala ka na maghahabol ka ng oras. So you have to
Mhm.
be smart when doing the test. Alam mo na kung anong gagawin mo, anong hahanapin mo. And
Mhm.
you can only do that if you do a lot of review. Kasi makikita mo yung different types ng test that you may encounter
Encounter,
in
oo.
the review
Mm.
test. Yun. And now for reading, sa reading, and if they've reviewed the materials, all the answers are in the text. They can be
Mhm.
found doon mismo
Mhm.
sa teksto. They just have to be smart on how to read. Ang problema kasi diyan, I've noticed, Rene,
Hmm.
ah, sa Philippines kasi, ang turo ng reading comprehension, Diyos mio, anong ginagawa sa atin ng mga teachers natin dati, no? Ah, Pagbabasahin, tapos bigyan ka ng question. So, anong nangyayari sa Filipino na test taker? Titingnan natin question, di ba?
Hmm.
Tingnan natin question. Yun ang training natin, di ba? Reading comprehension. Tingnan yung question bago magbasa. Sa
Oo.
IELTS, no, hindi, it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't
Mhm.
happen like that. And one thing, if they notice, pag ano sila sa IELTS, yung tanong, hindi siya madaya katulad ng mga teachers natin ng English ng high school. Yung irarambol sa IELTS test, yung question na number 1, nandun sa first paragraph.
Mhm.
Hindi siya madaya. You just have to follow. If they have reviewed enough materials, they would have realized it. Na ano siya, steady siya, chronological siya. Hindi siya madaya.
Chronologically,
Ang
yes.
ginagawa natin,
Mm.
may mga teachers natin dati gusto ayaw nila ma-perfect natin. So, ginugulo nila. Pero sa IELTS test, hindi. Talagang diretso siya. So, you just have
Structured
to
siya. Structured talaga
structure
siya
siya.
na ano, oo.
But there's a main difference between an academic and sa reading.
Hmm.
Talking about
Mm.
reading. Kasi yung listening is the same for both academic and general.
Okay.
Ayan.
Mhm.
So pareho kayong kahirapan. Yung reading would be different. Yung academic na reading kasi, medyo
Hmm.
mahirap. Ang tingin ko kasi, nung chinecheck ko siya yung mga materials, some of them really come from science, mga magazines.
Sa mga journals, oo.
Nire-rewrite, nire-restructure for an IELTS test. Kunyari, Scientific American, kumuha ng isang ng article doon. Then they
Mhm.
rewrite it. I think they rewrite it and then pakiramdam ko ganun ang pagkakagawa eh. That's where
Mhm.
they get the materials. And then, pero, yung structure is the same. And if they look closely enough, they would know na, for example, in a research article na mahaba, di ba, 2
Hmm.
pages yan, ito yung premise, ito na yung na-discover. Sasabihin ng isang researcher, oo nga raw. Sa fourth paragraph, yung isang researcher, sabi hindi daw. Tapos babalik na
Mhm.
naman another researcher. Iisang pattern ng academic reading, makikita niyo yan. And then, so pag ganun yung na-encounter nila, they would have to look at each paragraph kasi nga it was rewritten. So each paragraph would have one topic. One
Mhm.
topic. If they've look closely. And yung topic na yon, you should know when to go back to that topic. So ako, when I teach reading for academic tests, I ask them to write down anything in their first language. What is this paragraph about? Kasi you can write
Mhm.
naman, di ba, Rene, on the paper
Mhm.
eh. You can write anything
Mhm.
kasi shred lang yan. So you just write down, i-summarize mo siya quickly in your own language if it helps. Hindi
Mhm.
kailangan i-test. We always revert to the first language. Sulat mo dyan kung ano yan. At tungkol saan yan.
Mhm.
So that when you're trying to do the other test part, yung test na, di ba, meron dyan yung ima-match mo yung headings, di ba? Yung headings na
Mhm.
yun, summary lang yun eh.
Mhm.
Oh, pero you
Mhm.
don't realize that when you do the test. yung sasabihin, ay, ito pala. Kasi sa tingin ko, it's because tensyonado na yung tao when they're taking the test.
Oo, kasi yun na yung nasa lalo na bandang dulo na ano,
Oo,
'di ba?
pahirap ng pahirap, eh. Napansin niyo, kahit naman napansin niyo yun, eh. Kahit sa general naman kasi madali.
Mhm.
Kaya lang madali, sasabihin ko madali compared sa academic.
Academic.
However,
Iba ang ano, iba
'di
ang
ba,
academic kasi may
kumbaga
certain
makain, iba texture niya.
oo.
Yung ano siya, more on the practical side, like anong klaseng sign 'to? Saan mo makikita 'tong sign na 'to? Kasi
Mm,
general training siya, 'di ba, for migration purposes. So,
mm,
dapat makita nila that you can cope sa ganitong situation. Marunong ka magbasa ng signs, marunong ka nagma-match pa nga yan minsan, "Oh, where can you watch? Anong
mm,
advertisement puwede mo mahanap 'to?" Gano'n. So, pabilisan ng mata. So,
mhm,
in that regard, kung hindi siya for registration, hindi siya academic, dapat nagbabasa ka na, nagte-train ka na, kasi for normal people na hindi academic ang setting ang trabaho, I know matagal na silang hindi nagbabasa masyado kasi everything is
hmm,
ano na, nasa online na, 'di ba,
hmm,
Rene?
mm,
You
mm,
watch the news, you read the news, nakalink na sa Facebook, and that's how
mm,
they read. That's how people read. They don't realize they're still reading,
mm.
pero it's reading. Kaya lang hindi na siya print media, talagang ano na,
Hindi na, tsaka
online
ano
na.
yung
So,
nagre-rely na sila sa visuals, yung parang
oo.
gano'n na ano,
Ang
oo.
problema, when they take the test, papel.
Mm, mm,
But
mm,
they're proficient, they read, they understand what they're reading, but you have to go back to old-fashioned way na test, babasahin mo sa papel.
mm.
Diba?
Correct, oo.
And then you answer questions.
Mm,
Kasi, and for many people na hindi academic yung setting ng pinanggagalingan, hindi nila gusto. Yun ang unang sasabihin nila, hindi ko gusto, hindi ako nagbabasa, ayoko magbasa.
hmm.
But they
Pero
do read.
hindi.
They do read.
Mhm,
So they just, i-click mo lang yan, kailan ka, paano ka nagbabasa,
mm,
ano ba hinahanap natin. So it's retraining the brain on how to read, di ba? And how to
mm,
find answers to what you've read.
mm.
So
Yung
yun.
ano,
Mm.
it will help Phil, if kagaya yung halimbawa, you also watch the news, parang gano'n, you listen to the
Yes,
radio kasi nandun yung nuances ng language, 'di ba?
yes,
Yung
yes.
kaya kailangan ano ka, aware ka sa the way it's pronounced, the way it's,
Yes,
you know,
yes. It would
choice of
help a
words.
lot. Yes, it would help a lot. Kaya nga yung mga nasa New Zealand na doing, planning to take the tests, sabi ko
Mhm,
sa kanila, um, nakakaano na kayo kasi here sa workplace, you're talking with Kiwis.
mhm,
At
mm,
night, you turn on the TV, you listen to news. On
mhm,
the radio sa car, you listen to them. At yun din yung tenga,
mm,
compared to examinees or candidates, for example, from the Philippines, 'di ba?
mhm.
Iba. So dito dapat nakakaano na kayo, naka-practice na yung tenga natin at yun na tayo.
Oo, ano na,
Mas mas
praktisado
may
na yung tenga.
mas may edge na. Yun nga lang,
Mhm,
hindi pero ganun pa man, dapat pa rin mag-review ka kasi para malaman mo ano yung structure ng test para
mm, mm,
I can achieve the
mhm,
highest possible mark, 'di ba? Kasi
mhm,
maganda rin yung malalaman mo, ito pala. Kasi when I do yung yung mga free na sessions na ganyan, and many of
mhm,
them are happy when they get, "Ay, ang galing ko pala." Yes, actually,
mhm,
akala ko lang hindi. But once you get to understand yung structure ng test, gagaling at gagaling. At saka, Rene, I think in Mascom, I think nawawala talaga yung nervyos natin when we're 'pag ready tayo, 'di ba?
hmm.
Oo,
Maghanda ka, ayun, oo.
in anything, 'pag ready tayo, alam natin 'to. Mas
Mhm,
malakas yung loob mo to take the test
mm,
kaysa somebody who hasn't prepared and then to take ng test, uunahan niya ng takot. So
mhm, mm,
so if you're prepared, you know you have practiced correctly and
mhm,
you have done a lot of reviews, self-reviews, mas lalakas yung loob nila to take the test, and the more confident they are, the
mhm,
the better the performance on the day.
mhm. Tsaka yung ano, yung kaba nandiyan pa rin yan kasi it's human
Yes.
nature, eh. Pero mama-manage mo eh. You'll be able to
Totoo
manage
yan.
it.
Oo, mama-manage.
Minimize mo, no? Kasi kung mauuna yung takot, mauuna yung kaba, eh yun, talo ka na agad na ano.
Matatalo ka
Eh,
agad, umpisa pa lang.
oo, and always think of the higher purpose, higher reason kung bakit kailangan mo ipasa yung
Yes.
IELTS, di ba? Because it's for your residency, it's for your job, it's for your family. So yung higher reason, yun ang mag-ano, yun ang, dun ka kakapit at yun ang makakatulong sa'yo, no? At siguro, in closing siguro, Phil, sabihin din natin dun sa mga hindi pumasa, huwag kayong mawala ng pag-asa. Huwag kayong, di ba, yung iba, di ba, they commit, I don't know, kung ano yung serious bodily harm or whatever na nangyayari, depressed.
No, no.
Hindi ho dapat. Kasi it is just the occasion. Siguro yung time na yon nung kumuha ka ng exam,
Yes.
nagkasakit ka, natatai ka, o kung ano man ang
Oo
nangyari
yun,
sa'yo.
totoo yun, oo.
So, ganun talaga, no? Don't take it against yourself. Yung parang mawawala yung self-worth mo. So, ako, napakawalang kwento ko pala na ano. But strive to do better and be
Oo.
prepared, which is what is very important. Preparation, no? Review, proper, yung sa akin, alaswerte lang. Sinuwerte lang ako, pero hindi pwedeng gano'n. Eh, paano kung minalas ako? Di ba? Parang gano'n.
Yes.
Oo,
Paano? Paano
paano
ba?
kung minalas ka? Di uulitin mo na naman, gagastos ka na naman. Di ba?
Mm.
Eh, kung time pressure ka, kailangan at a certain time, kailangan pinasa mo na. Kundi, deport ka or parang gano'n. So, I guess it's better to be in a group, to have a review, structured,
Yeah.
Marami namang mga review centers and organizations na nag-ano,
Helping. Ano, di ba maraming mga Pinoy din sa iba-ibang area, sa ibang cities, nagbibigay. Si Murray nagbibigay ng free yan. Bait yan eh. Murray Heasley. Si Doc.
yeah, si Doc, oo, si Doc
Nagbibigay
Hisley.
siya with his wife ng review. Laging ano yan, tandem yan.
Yan,
Oo.
siya ang ating next na part 2 natin.
Yes.
Phil, your email is still Phil at
Immigration.com.
immigration.com. Ipapakita ko lang yung email ni Phil para dun sa mga kasi may mga nag-message sa akin, so yun ang binibigay ko, no?
Oo,
Phil at
nag-i-email na sila rin eh. Thank you. Yeah.
at southeMiggration. Kasi yung iba hindi ko masagot yung ibang mga katanungan na technical halimbawa or yung mga updates sa mga teachers. Kasi ang inyong kuya rin ay ako yung taga-daloy lang ng usapan. Yan. Kaya nga may resource person tayo kagaya ni Phil. Perfect resource person si Phil. Dahil siya ay dating guro, no? Sa Pilipinas pa. Hindi kami nag-abot sa Kolehiyo San Agustin, pero nagturo kami doon. Tapos nagturo din siya dito sa kolehiyo, sa universidad, sa high school. Sa pare-pareho kami. Kaya lang, hindi ako trained as an examiner. Lang ako, maboka lang ako eh. Ako yung broadcaster eh.
But you're very spontaneous, Rene. It's a different skill.
Yes, oo, yun. Siguro nahasa ako sa radyo kasi sa Pilipinas, radyo, di ba? So, ako,
Galing.
broadcaster ako. And I guess it is parang personally interested ako. Kagaya nito, yung para sa akin, every conversation, there's bits of knowledge that comes out from our conversation. Huh? So, yan ang gusto kong i-share din sa ating mga viewers and listeners. Thank you very much, Phil. At ang dami ko ng sa'yo na as a resource person. Kasi
Walang
mahaba
problema.
ito. Nag-umpisa po kami ni Phil, di ba, yung tungkol sa in general lang, di ba? Tapos nag-IQA na kami, yung pinag-uusapan, yung IQA. Kasi bago mag-IELTS, IQA muna, di ba? Yung ba yun?
Oo.
So, may structure din kami ni Phil, ha? So, IQA,
Isa-isa. Stages
isa-isa.
tayo. Huwag magmamadali. Kasi ang
Madali.
hirap eh. Mantakin mo. Lahat yan may bayaran yan. So, dapat isa-isa para hindi mahirap. Di ba?
Magkano na ngayon, Phil, ang IELTS, ang exam?
395 o 395. Sa
Parang
Philippines,
395.
oo, 395.
Sa Philippines is magkano kaya? Mga 14, 15,
Oo,
something.
mahal. Ang mahal ng
Mahal.
So we
Oo.
understand where people are coming from, yung stress nila, yung mga pangamba nila. Oo. Naiintindihan din natin yun kasi yung time is running out, kailangan na natin requirement na 'to,
Mhm.
ganyan. So, maraming mga factors na naglalaro for test takers, 'di ba? So,
Mhm.
and we can and the examiners are only there to mark whatever is recorded. So sana wag sasama loob nila, sasabihin nila hindi nakangiti, mukha raw nakakatakot. Pero they have totoo yan, but
Oo, ako
they have to understand that examiners are not paid to smile.
oo, gano'n? Oo.
Because
They're very
they're
professional,
very
'di ba?
hard on everything that ano, yung sa conversation dun sa test mismo, they're trying to grade eh. 'Di ba? Para silang right, I describe it like yung radio wave ba yung frequency.
Mhm.
Ganun yung
Yung
utak ng
gano'n,
examiner
oo.
transferring to you. So, swerte na lang kung palangiti yung examiner. Pero 'pag hindi, huwag sasama loob.
Mhm.
Um, ako kasi hindi ako ngumingiti, siguro nakakatakot 'pag 'di ako naiintindihan ko rin kung ako rin yung test taker, kaya lang kasi when you're listening intently sa
Mhm.
conversation, kasi test yun, hindi naman yung conversation test yun. So,
Mhm.
when you're listening intently, don't take it against them that they don't smile, they don't look friendly.
Mhm.
Kasi, nagkatrabaho lang yung tao.
Mm, mm. Alam mo Phil, habang binabanggit mo yan, parang I'm tempted to take parang gusto ko lang ma-experience ulit, kaya lang mahal, $300.
Mahal na experience yun.
Mahal na experience yun, wag na lang. Parang gusto ko kasi nakalimutan ko na, hindi ko na matandaan. Alam ko, parang sa isang sinabihan ako ng, "Take it easy, relax." Parang ginanon ako kasi siguro nakita tense na tense ako, ginanon ako. But yung iba parang parang yung gano'n dumaan, eh, kasi nga 'di ba yung ano ka, yung pressure mo, but, yeah, mahal, mahal na experience, 'wag na.
Mahal na experience na yan,
'Di ba,
mahal.
sayang ticket na yan papuntang Dunedin, 'di ba?
Oo, so mahal na araw ha, mahal na araw na yan. Kasi minsan nagmo-board punta Dunedin eh, 'pag nag-Jetstar.
Oo nga, oo.
Ano yan, 'pag ano na yan, palapit na sa day. Sayang,
Well,
mahal siya.
mahal, oo. Maraming salamat Phil muli sa iyong, valuable input sa ating mga viewers, listeners, lalong-lalo na yung mga guro, yung mga they're planning to take the academic ano, exams, tapos yung general naman, no? So, pwede kayo makipag-ugnayan kay Phil sa phil@southimmigration.com at as much as possible, she will try to, of course, siyempre busy din si Phil. Phil, asan ang address na yung takeaway nga pala para doon sa mga
So
viewers?
may ano, ang pangalan ng takeaway namin, Fridays, F-R-Y, Fridays. Sa
F-I
Oo, Friday.
F-R-Y.
Prito-prito. Naku, sa 301 Moray Place, sa may Dunedin, sa City Center. Alam mo, Rene, kasi ang vision ko doon talaga, take away lang na gagawin
Mm.
ko sa Canderia style. Kaya lang nung sumama na yun sa akin yung mga chef, iba yung gumanda, in-order ako ng Chinese, Japanese, nagkaroon Filipino, and we also, meron kaming franchise ng Country Fried Chicken. Tapos, akala ko talaga, magki-take away, pupunta lang yung mga tao, bibili alis. Nag-umpisa
Mm.
ko, umupo yung mga tao.
Umupo na.
Sabi ko, ay, so naglagay na akong lamesa, ayusin mo na to. Alay, patay. Nagkaganon na. Tapos, ang issue ko rin dati, disposable lahat para walang
Mm.
hugasan. Diba? Kasi take
Mm.
Hala, hindi. Kasi masarap daw yung pagkain. Dapat daw maayos nakaplaga. Eh,
Oh.
sino maghuhugas ako ng pinggan? Yun. So, yun. So, people started, sitting and dining.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
ayun. So okay naman. Oh, so, nasa
Pero
city center lang if
mm.
anyone wants to pop in and get some Filipino or Chinese or Japanese
Mm.
food.
Pero nag-aano ka rin, you accept order for cakes and pastries,
Yes,
parang pang
yes.
take away na ano?
Oo. Oo, pag
Mm.
they look forward to that kasi alam nila busy ako. So people who know me, they would say, pag may time ko lang, please. Paggawa naman ng ube cake. Nakikiusap na lang. And for example, yung ginawan ko ng two-tier na 21st birthday cake niya na isang Pacifica.
Mm.
2 years ago, ginawan ko siya. Pumunta siya sa shop.
Mm.
Yesterday, wala ako. Nagka-park pa lang ako. And she wants to commission for another cake. I don't know for what occasion. So, yeah, we have that. Masaya naman. Masarap mag-bake, kaya lang yung oras talaga,
Yung
grabe.
oras lang, mm. So dun sa mga gusto makipag umorder, pwede rin kayo mag-email, same email, phil@southimmigration.com para para yung sa mga orders niyo sa cakes. Thank you
Mm.
very much, Phil,
Maraming
at all the best dyan sa yung venture and with your public service to our mga kababayans. And napakaganda ng mga inputs, ng mga bits of information na hindi natin nababasa. Thank you
mm.
very much for that, Phil. Alright, mga kaibigan. Maraming salamat po at pinayagan niyo kami muli ni Phil pumasok sa inyong mga tahanan, sa inyong mga puso sa araw nito. IELTS Real Secrets. Yan. Like and subscribe na rin po kayo sa page natin at para dumami po ang ating serbisyo publiko. Thank you very much, Phil, and good night. And God bless. Okay. Yeah, okay mga kaibigan. Thank you rin sa inyo. And ingat po. Malamig ngayon. Malamig pa dyan, Phil? Ano dyan?
Ngayon,
Ano
kanina
kami? 5 eh.
6.5, 6.55, ganun.
6.5, oh.
Umuulan.
Parang gano'n na rin kami, ha? Okay, thank you very much and good night and
Good
all the
night.
best.
Bye. Good night,
Bye-bye.